Guys, ladies and gentlemen, I may look like just an old guy standing here, but I want you to know I am a warrior. I am a Vietnam veteran, and I am very proud to say that I am a Vietnam veteran. I served in 1969 and the first part of 1970 with Lima Platoon, Bravo Company, 2nd 16th Ranger Battalion, the Big Red One. If you're going to be one, you might as well be a Big Red One. Duty first. And then in 1970, I didn't go home, but in 1970, the remainder of 1970, I served with Charlie Company, 3rd and 187th, 101st Airborne. And I proudly served with both combat units. My job, what I was trained for, I wasn't an officer then, I was a real soldier, it's what I tell people. I worked for a living. But I'm 11 Bravo. I didn't have a secondary MOS. I was trained to kill and survive. And I was very good at what I did. I am thankful for what I did. I am proud of what I did. And I know that the Vietnam experience for me shaped my life. God used it to make me the man that I am today. I've been a pastor for 42 plus years. I tell people that I haven't killed anybody in a long time that they can prove. And so I'm a little bit frustrated. But since I don't have a great deal of time, and I know it's cold here today, I want to just share one war story with you. It's a day that put a name on this wall. It's a day that changed my thoughts and my desires as a soldier. It was a Sunday, November the 16th, 1969. We worked in small man groups and we came out of our ambush. And we were going to rendezvous with the other platoons in our company. We only did this 3 times the whole time I was there. And it was so that we could be a blocking force for a large NVA element. The way we did the point team in the Ranger Battalion I was in, or the company I was in, we rotated. And on that day, George Fonzie, his nickname was Fonzie, and this was a long time before Happy Days in Fonzie. George Fonzie was from, I believe, Santa Monica, California. He was a tall, broad-shouldered, dark, wavy hair, handsome guy. Could have been a Hollywood guy. It was his last day in the bush. When we got resupplied, the choppers came and would unload. He was getting back on the chopper to go back. He had 5 days left to begin processing, to go back to the real world. I told Fonz, I said, hey Fonz, your last day in the bush. Man, I got point for you. My gift to you. And he said, no, Snoop, that was my nickname. And if you want to know how I got that nickname, you're going to have to buy a book. I'll tell you in the book. But I said, I got your point for you. And he said, no, Snoop, if you'll just be my slack, we're good to go. We walked that morning, and the LT had us walking on a tank trail. There was an urgency about us being where they wanted us to be. We didn't usually walk on tank trails. That wasn't a good thing. But it was faster than moving through the triple canopy jungle. About noontime, we stopped for chow. And even when we stopped for chow, we would stop and set up in a perimeter, a defensive perimeter. The point team would have the 12 o'clock, and then the other squads would circle around so that we had a complete perimeter. Fonz and I was his slack, and Garcia was the counter that day. And we stopped at an anthill, a termite mound. It was probably as wide as this sidewalk, looked like an ice cream cone turned upside down. It was hard as this concrete. And we set up on the front side of that. I had my steel pot off, turned upside down. I was sitting in the steel pot. It's more comfortable than you think, sort of, kind of. And Garcia was to my right. I had my rifle laying across my lap. We had finished eating those sea rations left over from World War II. Every can was stamped 1944. And we worry about milk getting out a day or two. But we had finished our meal, and Fonz was going back to my 3 o'clock, that position where Sergeant Crow and Rabbit and a bunch of those guys were. And he walked through the elephant grass off of the tank trail to go back there, and I guess going back there, he must have stepped over. When you're in grass, you step higher. I guess he stepped over the tripwire. But coming back the same way, he hit a tripwire. We didn't know it was a tripwire at the time. All I knew was there was a loud explosion. It was one of our 155 rounds that had not detonated, and the gooks, the bad guys, had booby-trapped it next to this, on the backside of this anthill. And all of the noise, as clear as day, I heard Fonz say his last words, "Oh my God." I was blown forward about 6 or 7 meters, but I had my rifle in my hand. I don't know, it just all happened. And like I said, we didn't know if it was an RPG, and so I started putting down suppressive fire to the 12 o'clock to the front. I emptied a magazine, I loaded another one, but there was no return fire, so we understood that it was obviously not incoming, but a booby trap. At that same time, I heard my good buddy Ears. Ears was at my 10 o'clock. He was a mule, he was carrying ammo for Howard. Howard's the only guy I know over that didn't have a nickname. He just Howard, big old tall dude in North Carolina. He was carrying the M60. And Ears cried out to me, he said, "Snoop, Snoop, I'm hit." I left the forward position with Garcia, and I went over to check on Ears. And Ears said, "Snoop, these cans under my leg," and the shrapnel from the blast had torn his rucksack, his backpack, his rucksack all apart, and there was stuff everywhere. And Ears was bleeding. There was blood everywhere. I lifted his right leg to move the cans out, and there were no cans there. And there wasn't much of his legs there either. It had just blown them off. I took my shirt off, and as best I could to try to slow the bleeding down, I wrapped his right leg with my shirt. I was covered in blood from just under my chin, all down my belly and my arms and my hands. And Howard, I think, gave me his shirt, and I wrapped Ears' left leg as best I could. Man, he was bleeding bad. It seemed like forever for dust-off to get there. We had multiple dust-off. We had 8 men wounded and Fonz was killed. So the first dust-off came in and we put the most severely wounded, which Ears was one of them. Ears going in and out of consciousness as I was staying by his side and helped load him on the dust-off. Sergeant Crow lost an eye. His head, his face was just ripped apart by the shrapnel. That dust-off left. We brought in another dust-off. That was dangerous, more so than the first one even, because the bad guys would hear the dust-off and they would know, because they probably heard the explosion as well. We didn't usually put dead people on the chopper with living people, but because this was the last chopper out, after we loaded all of the wounded, the rest of the wounded, I helped load Fonz. Fonz was blown in half. The only thing connecting his upper torso to his lower torso was his right pelvic bone. He never bled a drop. Cauterized him, the explosion. We loaded him on, and hey guys, I don't know, I'm older now, but I was only 19 years old when all of this was happening. And I'm standing there. We didn't lose men. We were a Ranger battalion. We'd lost men, but not like this. I was standing there, and Sergeant Sanders, he wasn't as tall as I, he's a little guy, ugly. I figured he was real old. Anybody get that ugly? His face all scarred up. I thought this guy probably been in, I don't know, 2 or 3 wars. But he looked up at me, I won't ever forget. He said, "Snoop, I don't think Fonz is going to make it." And I looked down at him and I said, "Sarge, Fonz is dead." The shock of what had happened in a matter of moments. I found out Sanders had only been there a couple of months longer than I. That was a day that changed my life. Oh, I'd had a lot of other moments of combat. I earned this CIB, this blue badge. The only medal or ribbon that's earned. All the rest are awarded. Even the highest in the land, the Congressional Medal of Honor. But this blue badge, the CIB, is the only one that's earned. And I earned it an hour and 45 minutes after I had boots on the ground in the jungle. I killed 4 men. But this day, I had a close friend to die, and 8 close friends to be wounded, and a real close friend I didn't figure I'd ever see again. Ears, by the way, flatlined 4 times, they told him. I forgot how many units of blood. I didn't know he survived. 40 years later, he called me on the telephone. He found me. He still lives in Avon, Ohio, where he was from. And when he said, "Snoop," I recognized his voice, even though it had been 40 years. "Ears, is that you?" But I want to tell you something about that day. I didn't know about this wall. I had no idea this wall would ever be built. I have friends down at that end of the wall, and scattered throughout this wall, not many, at this end of the wall. But friends, I'm going to tell you something. I've seen violence. I've done violent things. And we all talk about being ready to defend our country. I pray that it never comes to that, not on our soil. But friends, I want to tell you something. This old man is ready to bear arms, because doing violent things is not something you forget. Every night, I do battle with the demons of my past. But one other thing. These boots that I laid before you, I wore these boots, not one like them. I wore these boots out of the jungles of Vietnam 51 years ago when I came home. We didn't get to take our boots off at night. I slept on the ground. My grandchildren can't get over the fact that I only had 3 showers, except for coming and going. I lived in the jungle. I slept on the ground like an animal. When we had the opportunity to take our boots off, we did so one at a time, one soldier at a time, and one boot at a time. And then we put them back on, because you see, we slept with our boots on because we had to be ready to move, ready to fight. And that was nearly every night in ambush. I'm dressed up. I got these shiny shoes on. They pretty, aren't they? Don't they look good? They look better than they wear, let me assure you. But I'm going to tell you something. I've got a lot of education, but I'm just an old country boy. And when I get home in a little bit, warm up, I'm going to take these shiny shoes off. And I probably won't have another pair of shoes on till in the morning. I like sleeping barefooted with my feet out from under the cover. Didn't get to do that in Vietnam. But people, I want you to remember something. Tonight, when you go to your warm home and you take your boots off, your shoes off, I want you to remember that there are men and women scattered around the world sleeping with their boots on, so that you have the freedom to sleep with yours off. Amen. I am a warrior. Thank you.